Mama always said Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. From the day we're born until the day we die, lots of good things happen. At the same time, other stuff happens. A lot of that other stuff wounds us and leaves us feeling angry. In my experience as Christians, we're not so great at knowing what to do with our anger or how to deal with it. Last summer, when I was given the opportunity to preach, I was surprised by how many people of different ages, from teenagers to seniors, said they could really relate to the focus of that sermon. I had confessed then that for several years, when praying the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, I silently had inserted my own little footnote, except for what's his name. Even in the middle of this sacred prayer, I wanted to stay angry. There was someone I consciously, enthusiastically refused to forgive until I finally let it go. Apparently, a problem that a lot of us have is an unwillingness to release old grievances, even if it hurts us. Old wounds are pretty much impossible to forget, often harder to forgive. Holding on to old grievances, there is less room in our hearts for love, less energy for kindness, less capacity for empathy. It's hurt that makes us angry, and often we don't want to let it go. It wasn't even somebody in my personal life. It was someone in my workplace, but it took me a long time to release those hostile feelings and move on. Anger is an energy, wrote psychiatrist Theodore Isaac Rubin in The Angry Book. Anger is an energy. You can't destroy it or forget it. It has to be converted. But how? What to do with anger is complicated. Forgiveness is complicated. How I think about it as a psychologist doesn't necessarily with how I think about anger and forgiveness as a person of faith. Writing this sermon, the therapist I was trained to be and the believer I am were having a little war. There are two very different stories I had to try to figure out. The Joseph story in Genesis and a story of abuse, anger, and healing in the movie Forrest Gump. How do I reconcile what the scriptures say versus what I've been taught, experienced, and taught others as the lessons of healing from psychology or behavioral science? I really would encourage you to rent and watch or rewatch this classic movie with then young Tom Hanks and Sally Field. In the beginning, Forrest Gump is a little boy with an IQ of 75. Along with his mental limitations, he's physically limited by cumbersome braces on his legs. Other children and adults call him stupid, everyone but his mother, played by Sally Fields. Also, his best friend and only friend, a little girl named Jenny. From a young age, Jenny's mother is dead, and her stepfather horribly abuses her, both sexually and with beatings. She runs away from home, still a child. Like many child victims of abuse, Jenny falls in with others who abuse her, especially violent men, when young and as a grown woman. Also, like many child abuse victims, she uses alcohol and drugs to anesthetize her pain. Only Forrest Gump, as a child and then adult, treats Jenny with kindness, tries to defend and protect her from violence. He beats up some of her abusers. "I'm not a smart man," he says, "but I know what love is." As a grown woman, Jenny lives in ways so self-destructive that Forrest pleads with her, "Jenny, how could you do these things?" The answer, of course, is that Jenny is being eaten up with great, long-standing pain and understandable rage. There's a climax in the movie clip we're about to watch on YouTube. Years later, as an adult, Jenny goes back to that now abandoned house. It's where she was abused again and again as a helpless little girl.
Sometimes I guess there just aren't enough rocks.
Sometimes, Forrest says, I guess sometimes there just aren't enough rocks. In order to heal, she has got to have her anger. That rage has got to be released. It's too much pain than is possible to contain, except to act it out or cry it out. It's part of how people heal. For Jenny, it's not about forgiving her abuser. Abusers just gaslight, blame, and re-injure their victims. It's about forgiving herself for all the ways she acted out her pain, letting that go. We lose people we love through death, distance, divorce, drugs, sickness, or estrangement. Our understandable, very human, necessary reaction to grief is also anger. So many bad things happen to innocent, good people. Way too many good things seem to happen to bad people. Life isn't fair. There isn't any fairness in who gets cancer or dementia or loses a child or suffers poverty or systemic racism. Life doesn't distribute its sorrows in any sort of just or equal way. All sorts of things wound us. Anger is an energy. You can't forget it or ignore it. It has to be converted. The next part is transforming old grievances. Hurt and anger can be converted into something good. All that energy and the hard-won lessons of loss or injury can be turned into something that makes you wiser, stronger, kinder, more compassionate toward others. Like Forrest Gump, we have to do the best we can with who we are and what God gives us. Imagine now that you're Joseph, a 17-year-old boy shepherding the flock with your brothers. Your brothers hate you because you're the favored child. Your father has dressed you in a long, luxurious robe with sleeves, while your brothers wear short, ordinary tunics with no sleeves. Scriptures say, when his brothers saw that their father loved Joseph more than all of his brothers, they were jealous, hated him, and could not speak peaceably to him. After Joseph began to share his prophetic dreams of his future as a leader before whom they would one day bow down, they only hated him all the more. So as was read this morning, his brothers conspired to kill him. They said to each other, "Here comes the dreamer. Let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say a wild beast devoured him, and we'll see what will become of his dreams." They plot to kill you, they throw you into a pit to die, and then they decide to get you out and sell you into slavery. They tear your luxurious robe into shreds, kill a goat, and soak the remnants of the robe in goat's blood. They'll take that shredded, bloody robe with sleeves back to their father, who will recognize it and believe that a wild beast has devoured his beloved son. Talk about sibling rivalry. And in the process, they broke their father's heart. The father wept, mourning bitterly for many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. So many years later, after enduring all sorts of adversities as a slave, including dungeon imprisonment, Joseph's dream interpretations saved the people of Egypt from starvation, from the famine that followed years of plenty. Pharaoh rewards Joseph by making him his prime minister, second only to Pharaoh in authority. The scriptures say, moreover, all the earth came to Egypt, to Joseph, to buy grain, because the famine was severe all over the earth. With all that power and authority, Joseph could have refused grain to his brothers when they, desperate for food, journeyed to Egypt during the famine. The brothers didn't recognize that this leader, only second to Pharaoh, was the brother they hated, wanted to kill, and sold into slavery. Joseph could have had all of them killed or put into slavery, but he didn't. He sent them away with a huge supply of grain and gave them back the money they brought for payment. At a much later time, Joseph revealed himself to his brothers and wept bitterly. He felt the unimaginable sorrow of the cruelties his brothers had inflicted upon him, but he forgave them. God was with Joseph, according to Genesis. What Joseph said then to his brothers in today's language, what you intended for evil, God redid for good. As our minister, Reverend Amy McCullough, explains it, our scriptures embody the worldview of the people of God who lived thousands of years ago. Oral stories shared around campfires were written down generations later. It's our job to study how those scriptures can speak to us today. Joseph would not have become the transformative figure in history he became had not all those horrible things been done to him. My future son-in-law puts it this way: my two forbidden R's are resentment and regret. Resentment is a waste of time, Corey says. And regarding regret, life has its ups and downs, but without those, I wouldn't be who I am. It's like regretting your foot. Here's my takeaway from the Joseph story. God's mysterious, incomprehensible power and presence, slicing through time over thousands of years, can turn the horrible things that we humans do to each other into profound acts of healing and history-altering redemption. I want to repeat that. God's mysterious, incomprehensible power and presence, slicing through time over thousands of years, can turn the horrible things that we humans do to each other into profound acts of healing and history-altering redemption. Those who practice compassion, empathy, mercy, kindness, justice, fairness, equality, and forgiveness, they are part of how God is with us now. Maybe there are a lot of similarities between what is necessary for healing according to what I believe as a person of faith and how I think as a psychologist. We can learn from the bad things that happen to us. We can decide to turn old wounds and anger into a passion for helping others and doing good. But as believers, I think there's another dimension. Jesus said, "Do not judge, do not condemn. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back." At a personal level, with our own decisions and actions, there is an important question to ask. What will you allow God to redo for you? Amen.